My parents secretly transferred my inherited apartment to my sister while I was deployed overseas. They're about to learn why that was the biggest mistake of their lives. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. I'm a 31-year-old man named Elliot, and I honestly don't know where to start with this mess. I've been lurking on Reddit for years, but never thought I'd be posting something like this. I'm still processing what happened, and I need to get this out before I lose my mind completely. For context, I've been in the military for the past 8 years. I enlisted right after college and have been deployed multiple times. My grandmother, who raised me after my parents divorced when I was young, passed away 2 years ago while I was stationed overseas. She was the most important person in my life. She took me in when my parents were too busy fighting each other to care about their kids. My grandmother owned a beautiful apartment in downtown Portland that she'd bought in the 1970s. It's worth about $400,000 now, maybe more with the current market. Before she died, she made it very clear to everyone that this apartment was going to me. She even had it written into her will, witnessed by her lawyer and everything. She said it was because I was the one who visited her every weekend before I enlisted, helped her with groceries, fixed things around the house. My sister Madison barely called, let alone visited. When my grandmother died, I was in the middle of a deployment that I couldn't leave. The funeral arrangements, estate handling, everything had to be managed from thousands of miles away. My parents, David and Linda, stepped in to help with the paperwork. They assured me they were just handling the logistics until I could return stateside and take care of everything properly. I trusted them completely. These are my parents. Why wouldn't I? I came back from deployment 3 months ago, excited to finally see the apartment that was now mine. I had plans to renovate it, maybe rent it out while I finished my military service, or possibly move in myself when I got out. I'd been looking forward to having this connection to my grandmother, this piece of her that I could hold on to. That's when my world fell apart. I went to the apartment building, and the doorman looked confused when I introduced myself as the new owner. He said he'd been told that a woman named Madison was the owner now. My stomach dropped, but I figured there was some miscommunication. Maybe the paperwork hadn't been updated yet. I called my parents immediately. My dad answered with this weird tone in his voice, like he'd been dreading this call. When I asked about the apartment, there was this long pause. Then he said we needed to have a family meeting. The meeting was yesterday. I drove to my parents' house, still believing this was all some kind of administrative error that we could fix quickly. Madison was there too, which seemed strange, but I figured they wanted to clear everything up together. That's when they dropped the bomb. My parents had transferred the deed to Madison. They sat there in the living room, my dad fidgeting with his coffee cup, my mom staring at her hands, and Madison looking defiant, and told me that they'd made an executive decision about the apartment. They claimed they had power of attorney for family decisions while I was deployed, which gave them the right to redistribute inheritance in the family's best interest. I've never heard of anything so insane in my life. My dad started explaining that Madison had been going through a rough patch. She'd lost her job, broken up with her boyfriend, and was struggling financially. They felt she needed the stability more than I did. Since I was in the military with guaranteed housing and income, they decided I could handle the disappointment better. I sat there listening to this, feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. Madison chimed in, saying she was sorry it had to happen this way, but she was already living in the apartment and had been for 6 months. She'd moved in right after the estate was settled, thinking it was temporary, but then my parents made it permanent. The apartment that my grandmother specifically left to me, where I was supposed to build my future, was now my sister's home. I asked to see the paperwork. My dad reluctantly handed over a folder with documents that showed the deed transfer. Everything looked official, with signatures and notarizations. But something felt wrong about the whole thing. The dates didn't make sense, and some of the paperwork looked like it had been prepared in advance. When I questioned this, my parents got defensive. My mom started crying, saying they only wanted what was best for both their children. My dad accused me of being selfish and not caring about my sister's well-being. Madison said I was being unreasonable and that I should be happy she was keeping the apartment in the family. I left without saying another word. I've been staying in a hotel room for the past 2 days, trying to figure out what to do next. I've done some preliminary research, and I'm pretty sure what they did was illegal. You can't just transfer property that belongs to someone else, even with power of attorney. But the legal system is complicated, and I don't know how to prove that this transfer was unauthorized. The betrayal is what hurts the most. These are people I trusted with my life. I was defending our country overseas while they were scheming to steal my inheritance. My grandmother specifically wanted me to have that apartment, and they just took it. I called my sister this morning to try to reason with her. I explained that this wasn't just about money or property, it was about honoring our grandmother's wishes. Madison actually laughed and said that dead people don't have opinions. She told me to move on and stop being dramatic. I don't know what to do. I feel completely betrayed and lost. Has anyone dealt with something like this? Is there any way to reverse what they did? I'm supposed to report back to base in 2 weeks, but I can't leave this unresolved. Any advice would be appreciated. I just want what my grandmother intended for me to have. Update 1. 2 weeks later. I can't believe I'm back here so soon, but things have escalated quickly. First, thank you to everyone who reached out with advice and support. The response to my original post was overwhelming, and reading your comments helped me realize I wasn't crazy for being furious about this situation. I took many of your suggestions and immediately consulted with a lawyer. I found an estate attorney named Jennifer Walsh who specializes in inheritance disputes. She was horrified when I explained what happened and confirmed what many of you suspected. What my parents did was absolutely illegal. Here's what I learned. Power of attorney doesn't give you the right to transfer inherited property to someone else, especially when there's a clear will specifying the beneficiary. Even if my parents had legitimate power of attorney, which is questionable, they exceeded their authority by miles. The deed transfer was essentially fraudulent. Jennifer reviewed all the paperwork and immediately spotted several red flags. The notarizations were dated before my grandmother's estate was even settled. Some documents had signatures that didn't match my parents' usual signatures. Most damning, there was no legitimate power of attorney document that would have given them this authority. We filed an emergency injunction to stop any further transfers or sales of the property. We also sent cease and desist letters to my parents and Madison, demanding they not make any changes to the apartment or dispose of any assets. The confrontation with my family after they received these letters was brutal. My parents called me screaming. My dad accused me of weaponizing lawyers against family and said I was being vindictive. My mom sobbed on the phone, saying she never expected me to turn on them like this. They both kept insisting they were just trying to help Madison and that I was being selfish. But here's the thing that really got to me. During this call, my dad let slip that they'd been planning this for months. He said they knew I'd be upset initially, but they thought I'd come around once I saw how much the apartment meant to Madison. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision to help my sister. This was a calculated plan to steal my inheritance. Madison's reaction was even worse. She showed up at my hotel room unannounced yesterday, furious about the legal papers. She accused me of trying to make her homeless and said I was being cruel by taking away her stability. When I pointed out that the apartment was never hers to begin with, she actually said that inheritance laws are outdated and that family should redistribute wealth based on need, not on what some old woman wrote in a will. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was talking about our grandmother, the woman who took care of both of us when our parents were too busy with their divorce drama, like she was some random stranger whose wishes didn't matter. The most infuriating part was when Madison offered to compromise. She suggested I could buy the apartment from her for $300,000, which she claimed was below market value, so it was basically like she was doing me a favor. When I told her that was insane because the apartment was already legally mine, she accused me of being unreasonable and unwilling to work with family. I've also learned more about Madison's financial situation that makes this whole thing even more maddening. She didn't lose her job. She quit because she didn't like her boss. The breakup with her boyfriend wasn't some traumatic event. They'd been having problems for months because he was tired of supporting her financially. She's not this struggling victim my parents painted her as. She's a 29-year-old woman who's never learned to be responsible because our parents have always bailed her out. And now they've bailed her out with my inheritance. The legal process is moving forward, but it's going to take time. Jennifer is confident we'll win, but she warned me that family disputes like this can get ugly fast. She was right. My parents have now hired their own lawyer and are claiming that the transfer was legitimate and that I'm trying to steal property from my sister. They've also started a campaign to turn other family members against me. My uncle called yesterday to tell me I was being heartless and that Madison had called him crying about how I was trying to ruin her life. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone that I'm being greedy and that I have plenty of money from the military so I don't need the apartment. The extended family doesn't know the full story. They don't know that my grandmother specifically left the apartment to me, or that my parents transferred it without authorization. They just know that there's a fight over property and that I'm the one with lawyers involved. I've tried explaining the situation to a few relatives, but my parents have had a head start on controlling the narrative. It's exhausting having to defend myself to people who should know me better than this. The hardest part is feeling like I've lost my entire family over this. My parents won't speak to me except through their lawyer. Madison has blocked my number. I'm persona non grata at family gatherings. All because I want what my grandmother legally left to me. I'm back on base now, trying to focus on my duties while this legal battle plays out. My commanding officer has been understanding about the situation, and I'm grateful for that. But it's hard to concentrate when I know my family is actively working against me. Jennifer says we should have a resolution within the next few months. The evidence is strongly in our favor, and she doesn't think my parents' lawyer will be able to mount much of a defense. But the emotional damage is already done. I keep thinking about my grandmother and wondering what she would think about this situation. She loved all of us, but she made her wishes clear. She wanted me to have that apartment, and she trusted that her family would honor those wishes after she was gone. I'm fighting this not just for the apartment, but for her memory and her intentions. She deserves to have her final wishes respected, not overturned by family members who think they know better. I'll update again when there's more news from the legal front. Thank you again for all the support and advice. It means more than you know. Update 2-3 months later. The legal battle has been intense, but we're finally seeing some real progress. I need to share what's been happening because honestly, I think I would have given up without the support from this community. Jennifer, my lawyer, filed a comprehensive lawsuit 3 weeks ago. We're not just seeking to reverse the fraudulent deed transfer, we're also pursuing charges for forgery, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The evidence we've gathered is overwhelming. Here's what we discovered during the discovery process. The power of attorney document my parents claimed gave them authority was completely fabricated. They created it after my grandmother died and backdated it. The notary who supposedly witnessed it has no record of the transaction, and when we tracked her down, she confirmed she never notarized anything for my parents. Even more damaging, we found email exchanges between my parents and Madison from 6 months before my grandmother died. They were already planning to transfer the apartment to Madison, discussing how to work around the will. One email from my dad actually said, "Elliot will be overseas for another year, so we have time to get everything sorted before he comes back." This wasn't a spontaneous decision to help Madison. This was a premeditated scheme to steal my inheritance. The emails also revealed something that made my blood boil. Madison had been pressuring my parents to give her the apartment since our grandmother got sick. She'd apparently racked up significant credit card debt and was facing eviction from her previous apartment. Rather than helping her get back on her feet responsibly, my parents decided to solve her problems by stealing from me. When confronted with this evidence during depositions, my parents' story fell apart completely. My dad kept changing his explanation for why they transferred the apartment, first claiming it was for Madison's mental health, then saying they thought I didn't want it, then finally admitting they thought I'd be fine either way because of my military benefits. My mother broke down during her deposition and admitted they knew what they were doing was wrong, but they felt trapped between their children's needs. She actually said she thought I'd forgive them eventually because I was the understanding one in the family. Madison's deposition was a disaster for their side. She was defiant and entitled throughout the entire process. When asked why she thought she deserved an apartment that was specifically willed to me, she said that inheritance laws were unfair and that she had invested more emotional energy in the apartment by actually living there. She also made the mistake of admitting that she'd already started making significant changes to the apartment without permission. She'd renovated the kitchen, painted the walls, and even removed some of my grandmother's original fixtures. She claimed these improvements increased the property value and that I should be grateful for her upgrades. The judge was not impressed by any of this. During the preliminary hearing last week, Judge Martinez didn't hide his disgust with the situation. He called the deed transfer a textbook case of family fraud, and said he'd rarely seen such clear evidence of bad faith. He granted our injunction preventing any further changes to the apartment and ordered Madison to preserve all of my grandmother's remaining possessions. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that this was a family dispute that should be resolved privately, not in court. Judge Martinez shut that down immediately, pointing out that fraud doesn't become legal just because it happens within a family. The most satisfying moment came when Madison's lawyer tried to argue that she should be allowed to stay in the apartment during the legal proceedings because moving would cause her undue hardship. The judge asked why she thought her hardship was more important than mine, and when she couldn't answer, he ordered her to vacate the apartment within 30 days. She has to be out by next Friday. But the legal victory is just one part of this story. The family fallout has been devastating and revealing. Several relatives who initially sided with my parents have reached out to apologize after learning the full truth. My cousin Sarah, who I've always been close to, said she was horrified when she found out about the forged documents. She admitted that my parents had been lying to the extended family, claiming that my grandmother had changed her mind about the inheritance before she died. My uncle Robert, who called me heartless in my last update, apologized and said he never would have supported my parents if he'd known they were lying. He actually offered to testify on my behalf if needed. But not everyone came around. Some family members are so invested in my parents' version of events that they refuse to accept the truth even when presented with evidence. My Aunt Patricia actually accused me of fabricating the emails and court documents. She said I was destroying the family over money and that I should just let Madison keep the apartment for the sake of peace. My parents themselves have doubled down on their victim narrative. Even after their fraud was exposed in court, they're telling people that I'm using my military connections to manipulate the legal system. My dad sent me a text last week saying that I'd chosen lawyers over family and that he was disappointed in the man I'd become. The irony is incredible. They commit fraud, get caught red-handed, face legal consequences, and somehow I'm the villain for refusing to let them steal from me. Madison's reaction has been the most extreme. After the judge ordered her to vacate the apartment, she had a complete meltdown. She called me screaming, saying I was ruining her life and making her homeless. When I pointed out that she was never legally entitled to the apartment in the first place, she hung up on me. But she wasn't done. 3 days later, I got a call from the police. Madison had filed a complaint claiming I was harassing her and making threats. It was completely false. All of our communication had been through lawyers, but I still had to deal with a police investigation. Fortunately, phone records and the legal timeline proved her accusations were baseless. She's also been trying to rally support on social media, posting about how her family is abandoning her and how she's being forced out of her home by her cruel brother. Most people who know the situation aren't buying it, but she's managed to get sympathy from some mutual friends who don't have all the facts. The financial aspect has been challenging too. Legal fees are expensive, even though Jennifer is confident we'll recover costs when we win. I've had to take out a loan to cover the expenses, but it's worth it to get my inheritance back and hold my family accountable for their actions. I've also learned that Madison owes significantly more money than my parents let on. She's behind on multiple credit cards, has student loans in default, and apparently owes money to several friends. Getting the apartment wasn't just about helping her. It was about solving a financial crisis that she'd created through years of irresponsible spending. My parents basically stole my inheritance to bail out my sister's bad decisions, and they did it while I was serving my country overseas. The apartment will be mine again soon. Jennifer expects the final ruling within the next few weeks, and all signs point to a complete victory. I'll get the apartment back, along with damages for the unauthorized changes Madison made and compensation for my legal fees. But the real victory is knowing that my grandmother's wishes will finally be honored. That apartment represents her love and her intention to provide for my future. My family tried to steal that from both of us, but they failed. I'm planning to move into the apartment when I finish my current enlistment next year. I want to restore it to how my grandmother had it and create the home she envisioned for me. It'll be a fresh start, away from the family members who proved they can't be trusted. The next update should be the final one, hopefully with news of complete legal victory and Madison finally out of my apartment. Update 3, 6 months later, final. It's over. I'm writing this from my grandmother's apartment, my apartment, and I wanted to give everyone a final update on how this situation resolved. The court ruling came down 3 weeks ago, and it was a complete victory. Judge Martinez didn't just reverse the fraudulent deed transfer. He awarded me significant damages and ordered my parents to pay all my legal fees. The ruling was so strongly in my favor that my parents' lawyer advised them not to appeal. Madison was forced to vacate the apartment 6 months ago, as ordered. She didn't go quietly. On her last day, she did as much damage as she could, claiming she was taking back her improvements. She ripped out the kitchen cabinets she'd installed, took light fixtures, and even tried to take the hardwood floors before neighbors called the police. The damage added another $15,000 to what she owes me, bringing the total judgment to over $65,000. She's supposed to pay it back in monthly installments, though Jennifer warned me I might never see all of it. Madison has declared bankruptcy and moved across the country to live with a friend. Before leaving, she sent me one final text: "I hope you're happy. You destroyed your own family for money." I didn't respond. She still doesn't understand that this was never about money. It was about honoring my grandmother's wishes and refusing to let my family steal from me. My parents have become completely estranged from me. They paid the legal fees as ordered, but they refused to admit they did anything wrong. My dad sent me a check with a note saying, "Here's your blood money. I hope it was worth losing your family." The hypocrisy is stunning. They committed fraud, got caught, faced legal consequences, and somehow I'm the one who destroyed the family. But not everyone in the family abandoned me. Several relatives have reached out to apologize and express support. My cousin Sarah helped me move into the apartment and said she was ashamed she ever believed my parents' lies. My Uncle Robert has invited me to family gatherings at his house, saying he wants to maintain a relationship despite the situation with my parents. The extended family is essentially split now. About half support me and understand that my parents committed fraud. The other half either believe my parents' victim narrative or think I should have just let Madison keep the apartment for family harmony. I've made peace with losing the relatives who chose to side with fraud and theft. Their loyalty was conditional on my willingness to be victimized, and I'm not interested in relationships built on that foundation. Moving into the apartment has been emotional in ways I didn't expect. Going through my grandmother's remaining possessions, I found letters she'd written to me during my deployments that my parents never forwarded. In one letter, she specifically mentioned how proud she was of my service and how she wanted the apartment to be my home when I was ready to settle down. Finding those letters made me even more grateful that I fought for this place. My grandmother's intentions were crystal clear, and my family had no right to override them. I've spent the past few months restoring the apartment to how my grandmother had it. Madison's improvements were mostly cosmetic changes that covered up the original charm. I brought back the vintage fixtures, restored the original paint colors from old photos, and even found some of my grandmother's furniture that Madison had put in storage. It feels like home in a way no other place ever has. I finished my military enlistment last month and decided not to re-enlist. The apartment gives me a stable base to start the next chapter of my life. I'm using my GI Bill to go back to school for my master's degree, and I'm working part-time in property management, experience that will help me maintain my grandmother's investment. The financial benefits of winning the case have been significant too. The apartment has appreciated in value over the past year, and the rental potential in this neighborhood is strong. My grandmother's gift has given me options for my future that I never would have had otherwise. I've also started dating someone, Jennifer, actually, my lawyer. We connected over shared values about justice and doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. She's helped me process not just the legal aspects of the situation, but the emotional trauma of being betrayed by family. She keeps reminding me that enforcing boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. Looking back on this entire experience, I'm grateful for several things. First, I'm grateful for the Reddit community that supported me through this fight. The advice, encouragement, and perspective from strangers helped me stay strong when my own family was trying to gaslight me into accepting their fraud. Second, I'm grateful that I had the resources and determination to fight back. Many people in similar situations might not have access to good legal representation or the emotional strength to battle their own family in court. I realize how fortunate I was to be able to pursue justice. Third, I'm grateful for the relatives and friends who stood by me when they learned the truth. It's shown me that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about people who respect you enough to support you when you're right, even when it's inconvenient. Finally, I'm grateful for the lesson this experience taught me about setting boundaries. For years, I'd been the easy child who didn't make waves while Madison got away with everything. My parents expected me to continue that pattern even when they committed fraud against me. Learning to say no, to demand justice, and to accept that some relationships aren't worth preserving has been transformative. The apartment itself has become more than just a place to live. It's a symbol of my grandmother's love and my own refusal to be victimized. Every day I walk through these rooms, I'm reminded that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. My parents and Madison chose their path when they decided to commit fraud. They chose to prioritize Madison's wants over my rights, immediate gratification over long-term family relationships, and lies over honesty. The consequences they're facing now are the natural result of those choices. I don't hate them anymore. I've moved past anger into a kind of peaceful indifference. They're people who proved they can't be trusted, so I don't trust them. They're people who proved they don't respect me, so I don't seek their approval. They're people who committed crimes against me, so I don't include them in my life. It's that simple. For anyone dealing with similar family situations, my advice is this: trust your instincts when something feels wrong, document everything, get professional help from lawyers who specialize in estate issues, and don't let family guilt you into accepting abuse or fraud just because family should stick together. Family members who truly love you won't ask you to sacrifice your rights for their convenience. People who demand your acceptance of their wrongdoing aren't acting out of love, they're acting out of selfishness. My grandmother left me this apartment because she believed in my character and wanted to provide for my future. My parents and sister tried to steal that gift, but they failed. I'm living the life my grandmother envisioned for me, in the home she wanted me to have. That's the ending she would have wanted, and it's the ending I fought for. Justice was served, my inheritance was restored, and I learned valuable lessons about family, boundaries, and standing up for what's right. I couldn't ask for a better resolution. Thank you again to everyone who supported me through this journey. Your encouragement made all the difference.